When you picture the absolute worst case scenario, like the ultimate rock bottom of modern adult life, there's usually a very specific image that comes to mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very universal fear.
Right. And you lose the job, the savings dry up, the eviction notice arrives, and suddenly you are sitting in the driver's seat of your car, realizing you actually have to sleep there.
Mm-hmm.
It is widely considered the ultimate societal humiliation,
Mm-hmm.
like the definitive, undeniable proof that you have somehow just failed the basic test of adulthood.
Yeah, that's exactly how society frames it.
But what if that exact same experience, losing everything and living out of your trunk, was actually the source of a profound, unburdened freedom?
I mean, it is a massive paradox. It completely upends how we are conditioned to think about success, failure, and what a human being actually requires to feel a sense of peace.
That jarring contradiction is exactly what we are pulling apart today. We've got an incredibly raw, deeply personal piece of writing in front of us titled Freedom, Shame, and the Psychology of Living in a Car.
It's a heavy read, for sure.
It really is. And for everyone listening, we aren't going to spend time talking about the logistics today, like how to insulate your windows or where to park legally.
Right, there are plenty of resources for that already.
Exactly. We are looking directly at what happens to your actual identity, your psychology, when your physical address just completely disappears.
What's fascinating here is that the author's account isn't really a story about the physical hardships of poverty. I mean, it's a philosophical exploration of the invisible expectations we all live under.
Yeah.
It looks at what happens to a human mind when it falls out of the so-called uh, contract of adulthood.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the first thing that absolutely blew me away in this text is that the initial trauma of moving into your car isn't about the physical discomfort.
No, not at all.
You think it would be the cold, right?
Yeah.
Or the crank space, or just terrible sleep. But the author says it is almost entirely defined by a crushing social shame.
Yeah.
It's this intense paranoia of just being perceived by others.
The author describes this overwhelming hyperawareness of being seen by everyone else who is still participating in normal society.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they talk about walking into a grocery store or even just the gym where they go to shower and feeling this agonizing internal monologue.
And that internal monologue is brutal. The author is constantly scanning the room, asking themselves, can they tell? Do they know I slept in a parking lot last night?
Exactly. Are my clothes wrinkled in a way that gives it away?
Right. Am I becoming one of those people?
Mhm.
It makes me think about it like walking around with a giant, flashing, invisible siren on your head.
That's a great way to put it.
Like you are absolutely convinced everyone around you is judging you for failing that basic social contract of adulthood. Getting a job, paying rent, staying strictly inside the system.
We really have to look at why that shame feels so heavy, though. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, human beings are wired for tribal belonging. Our survival historically depended on being a valued member of the group. So in modern society, our membership is largely signaled through physical markers of stability.
Like the walls, the door, a permanent address.
Precisely. So the moment you lose those physical markers, your brain literally interprets it as being exiled from the tribe.
Oh, wow. So it's a deep biological panic.
It is. You lose your societal standing instantly. You are no longer seen as a participant in the community. You become a problem to be managed or a nuisance to be ignored.
That's rough.
It is. That sudden realization that society has a very specific, very dismissive box for you the moment you lose a lease is a profound psychological shock.
It's kind of like showing up to a black tie gala in your pajamas.
Oh, I like that.
Right, because the physical clothes aren't actually hurting you. You aren't in physical pain. But the social friction of knowing you are breaking the unspoken rules of the room is so incredibly loud that you just cannot think about anything else.
Yeah, you feel hypervisible.
Exactly. You are just radiating this invisible signal that says, I don't belong here anymore.
The pajamas at a gala analogy is perfect because it highlights that hypervisibility. You feel like everyone is staring at you, judging you for failing to uphold your end of the deal.
But look, I have to stop you there and push back on something.
Okay, go ahead.
Because when we walk through any major city right now, the homelessness crisis we see is often deeply intertwined with severe addiction and profound mental health struggles.
Yes, that's true.
So the stereotype of the unhoused person being dangerous or unpredictable, is society really just making that up to be cruel? Are we ignoring a harsh reality just to make this author's story work?
No, and that is a crucial distinction to make. We aren't endorsing any specific view, but we are looking at how the text frames this. What you are describing, the crisis we see on the sidewalks of major cities, that is chronic, visible street homelessness. And yes, that population frequently struggles with severe addiction and untreated mental illness. But the text points out there is an entirely different, vastly larger demographic of unhoused people that is largely invisible.
Which is vehicle homelessness.
Yes, the people sleeping in the Walmart parking lots, the people working alongside you.
That's wild to think about.
They are holding down jobs, they have gym memberships to shower, they are participating in the daily economy, they aren't addicts, they aren't violent, they didn't deliberately self-destruct. As the author so perfectly puts it, they simply ran out of runway.
Ran out of runway. Man, that phrase hit me hard when I read it.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does, because it describes a mathematical failure, not a moral one. The author's backstory in the text is actually a great example of this.
Yeah, they had a very different trajectory.
Right, they didn't spend their 20s climbing a corporate ladder or building a stock portfolio. They worked in the hospitality industry. They chased experiences.
Which is so common.
Exactly. They lived spontaneously and valued freedom and movement over rigid long-term structure.
Which is fascinating, right? Because that is a lifestyle our culture constantly romanticizes.
Totally. We make movies about it.
Exactly. The free spirit who rejects the cubicle to travel and live in the moment. We celebrate that.
But the real-world trade-off for being that free spirit is that you don't build a massive financial safety net.
No, you don't.
And eventually, a medical bill hits, or the rent spikes, or the seasonal job ends, and that lack of a net just catches up with you. The income stops, but the rent doesn't.
And this brings us back to why society leans so heavily into the stereotypes you mentioned earlier. Why is a grocery store clerk or a gym manager so quick to look at someone living in their car and assume laziness or drug use?
Why do you think that is?
The author suggests it is a psychological defense mechanism.
For the person doing the judging, you mean?
Yes. If we, as a society, attribute homelessness strictly to a severe moral failing or crippling addiction, we can tell ourselves a comforting story.
Ah, I see.
We can say, well, I don't do hard drugs and I go to work, so I am safe. That will never happen to me. It maintains our illusion of control.
Because if we admit that a perfectly sane, normal person, someone who just worked in restaurants and liked to travel, could just run out of runway and end up in their back seat,
Then what?
then we have to admit that the normal life we are all clinging to is actually incredibly fragile. We have to admit that we could run out of runway too.
That fragility is terrifying to the human ego.
It really is.
The author crossing that invisible line into homelessness shatters that illusion. They realized from the other side of the divide just how precarious the concept of normal really is.
That raises a huge question about the timeline of this whole experience. We start with this crushing paranoia, the feeling of being in pajamas at the gala, this exhausting hyperawareness.
Right.
But a human being can't sustain that. How do they survive that level of constant psychological panic without just losing their mind?
They survive it through a biological mechanism called habituation. This is where the narrative takes a really unexpected, fascinating turn.
Okay, tell me about habituation.
The author describes a process where, over a period of weeks and months, the fear simply starts to settle.
Just on its own, like it just fades.
Essentially, yes. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, treats a passerby looking at your parked car as if it were a tiger wrestling in the bushes.
Oh, wow. So it's a full fight or flight response.
Exactly. It dumps adrenaline into your system to prepare you to fight or flee. But if the tiger never actually attacks, night after night, the brain eventually stops wasting precious metabolic energy on the alarm bells.
It just runs out of juice.
Right. You literally run out of the biological capacity to panic. The fear burns itself out neurologically.
So the nervous system just adapts to the new baseline. The author calls this phase the Great Exhale.
I love that term.
It's so descriptive. And when that physical exhaustion sets in, something weird happens to the shame, doesn't it?
It does. When you are no longer terrified of losing your place in society, mostly because you've already lost it and the worst has already happened, you suddenly get to look at society from the outside.
You're out of the fishbowl.
Exactly. You are observing the fishbowl instead of swimming in it.
And what they see from the outside is honestly kind of staggering.
Yeah, it's a total perspective shift.
The author realizes how much of modern life, like how much of our daily grinding stress
Mm-hmm.
revolves entirely around maintaining an image.
Yes.
They list out the specific burdens: the apartment, the utility bills, the furniture bought on credit, the subscription services, and just the endless unspoken pressure to look successful to people you barely even know.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, stepping outside the system involuntarily forces a person to recognize the exhausting weight of societal expectations.
Really does.
When you are inside the system, you accept the constant upgrading, the curation of a lifestyle as completely normal. It's just what adults do.
Right.
But stripped of it, you see it as a massive, heavy burden.
It makes me think of modern life as a massive multiplayer video game.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Like, you are playing this incredibly complex game, but you're spending 90% of your energy, all your gold, and all your time just trying to keep your character's outfit looking expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
You're grinding for hours just to buy a nicer virtual couch for your virtual apartment, rather than actually going out and exploring the map or playing the game itself.
Yeah.
And all the stress comes from the fact that if you stop grinding, you lose the outfit.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The cognitive load required just to maintain the outfit is immense.
It's exhausting.
You have to answer the emails, to get the paycheck, to pay the rent, to store the couch, to impress the guests. It is a never-ending cycle of image maintenance.
But when you're living in a car, you have lost the outfit, you have lost the virtual apartment, the virtual, all of it.
It's all gone.
And the author notes something incredible here.
Yeah.
Once the initial mourning period for those things is over, the absence of that burden feels incredibly light.
Which brings us to the core contradiction we started with. Stripping away that burden of appearances leads directly to what the author calls brutal simplicity.
Brutal simplicity.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Because when you literally have nothing left to prove to anyone, your entire focus just narrows. The text outlines exactly what a day looks like when the image falls away.
It's very grounded.
Very. You aren't worrying about a 5-year career plan. You aren't worrying about whether your neighbor thinks your lawn looks nice.
Yeah.
Your whole day is distilled down to pure basic essentials.
Safety, sleep, food, hygiene, quiet, peace of mind.
Exactly.
The world becomes physically much smaller. You are confined to a few square feet of vehicle, but psychologically becomes vastly clearer.
Huh.
You only discover what genuinely matters to your nervous system when literally everything else is stripped away.
I was reading this section and marveling at it. Living in a car makes you feel completely socially rejected, but simultaneously strangely free.
It's a wild paradox.
It is. The author writes about experiencing these intense moments of clarity, moments of absolute minimalism and unvarnished honesty. And I couldn't help but think, this is the exact enlightenment that tech billionaires spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on silent retreats to try and artificially simulate.
That is a phenomenal comparison.
Right, like they go out in the desert, hand over their phones, and starve themselves on a meditation cushion for a week to try and find clarity and disconnect from the rat race.
Yeah, they pay for the privilege.
And here is this raw, profound honesty found simply in the involuntary loss of everything.
Those artificial retreats are an attempt to briefly escape the noise of the image maintenance game you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
People pay a premium to temporarily step out of the fishbowl.
But they always go back.
Exactly. But the author is living the permanent reality of it. When the noise is forcefully removed, the humiliation is real, yes, but the honesty is equally real. You can no longer hide behind your possessions or your status.
You're just you.
You have to face exactly who you are when nobody is looking.
That really brings it all home for you listening to this deep dive right now. Most likely, you aren't listening to this from the front seat of a car you're living in.
Probably not.
But this journey, from the paralyzing paranoia of the grocery store aisle to the quiet, brutal enlightenment of a stripped-down life, it has massive implications for all of us.
It demands that we examine our relationship with our own stability. We build these lives with layers and layers of protection.
Financial buffers, social status, material possessions.
Right. And while those layers undoubtedly provide physical comfort and safety, this text asks us to deeply consider the psychological cost of that comfort.
It challenges us to look at our daily routines and ask, how much of our stress, our anxiety, our burnout is tied up in that basic contract of adulthood?
How much of your vital energy is spent just maintaining the video game outfit?
Terrified of what happens if someone sees you in your pajamas. It's the realization that the very things we work so hard to acquire, the leases, the loans, the lifestyles, can sometimes become the very things that trap us in a cycle of fear.
The author lost everything, felt the crushing evolutionary weight of societal judgment, and then on the other side of that burned out fear, found a brutal, honest simplicity that many of us never ever get to experience.
Which leaves us with a heavy, brilliant question to consider as we wrap up today, something that extends way beyond the author's own experience in that parking lot.
If the sudden, involuntary loss of our physical walls, our furniture, and our worldly possessions leads to such a profound psychological clarity and unvarnished honesty,
Yeah.
is it possible that the traditional homes we work so tirelessly to build aren't just protecting us from the elements? Are they actually insulating us from truly knowing ourselves?
Man, are the walls keeping the rain out, or are they keeping us trapped in an image? Thank you for exploring this incredibly fascinating paradoxical perspective with us today.
It was a great discussion.
Because it turns out the ultimate societal humiliation and the most profound, unburdened freedom might just be parked in the exact same spot.